Hey, good morning, everybody. I'm super excited because I've got a very special guest with you. And so here I am. I already spilt my bone broth with turmeric in it. So I was just telling Karen, this is not, easy cleanup all the time. So I'm a little bit excited for sharing this special conversation with you and Karen and I have known each other for a while now and kept sort of tracks with each other and gone on our different ways of healing and teaching and learning. So in doing this live show, I thought, well, it's nice to have somebody to talk with and converse and have some interesting topics. It's not always me trying to channel something and see what you might need today. So today, Karen Cohen is my guest. And for those of you, it's your first time here, I welcome you. My name is Amira Hall, and I am a psychic medium. I am a manifesting mentor, and I am here to help people turn their pain into power and manifest their dreams, bring them into reality. And I'm super excited today, if you can't tell, because Karen has done just that. She has turned her pain into her power. And I just so love your new book, Karen, that she's bringing to share with us today. Karen is an 8 times Emmy Award winner. And I'm going to be real honest, I didn't know exactly what an Emmy meant. So I had to Google it. Thank God for Google, right? But Karen, you've been on this journey as a producer in television, in various centers in New York and Chicago, and in Los Angeles, most importantly. And so I want to welcome you and share with us your wisdom and what you've experienced, some of your joys, some of the maybe not so much fun, and to inspire women, particularly women, in reinventing themselves, taking their next step. Maybe their career's ending, maybe they've lost a part of themselves or they've lost a loved one. But I've been witnessing a lot of people losing themselves, and you're demonstrating exactly this next chapter. So welcome, Karen. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Amira. It's really fun being with you, and you're looking wonderful.
Oh, as you. I love that yellow on you.
Thank you. Yeah,
So tell me how it all began, Karen. Let's just go back to the basics. How did you get into TV?
Well, the basics is I started out as an actor. I literally came into this world wanting to be an actor. And I put on a resume years ago, from 0 to 18, I was an actor. And when I was at Drake University, my first year, I went to Drake University in Des Moines, Iowa. And I had this wonderful professor. I loved performing. I didn't like behind the scenes of acting at all. I didn't like the stage work. I didn't like lighting. I didn't like any of it. And I realized it in those courses that I was probably not going to be the great star that I had dreamed of being. And I had this wonderful professor. His name was Jim Duncan. And I took some TV courses from him. And he taught writing and directing and producing and what he did, and announcing. And every day you would actually do if it was writing, you would write something. If it was directing, you would direct something. It was announcing. And I found that I really loved the behind the scenes. I loved the control. So that really was, again, it's, when you have a really extraordinary professor, so that was the first major change I made. And I went back to Chicago, where I'm from, and got a job working at ABC as a secretary, and went to Columbia College, Chicago at night. So I completed my education at night at Columbia College, which I'm still very, very active in, because it's just a wonderful school, especially if you want to get into anything in the arts. I'm not sure where to go next. So I said,
well, you know what? I wanted, you caught me on something, is how you didn't know that you were going to like behind the scenes. And you got tricked, right? Because why? You did something different. You took a class, right? You stretched yourself and you learned and had a new perspective on something that you had a limited belief on that could have rearranged. It sounds like it rearranged your entire career.
Totally. That's And that's why I give Jim Duncan the credit for it. I did an interview with the NBC station there recently to talk about how extraordinary this man was. So yes, I mean, I also learned, and I learned it mostly writing the book, which I just started in 21 and finished and published this year. I realized how guided I have been throughout my life. I didn't have a consciousness of angels and guides. I didn't even know that people who, I didn't even know the Jews believed in angels. I mean, I now know that that's a big, that's how limited my experience was. When I go, and now I'm very much into my angels and guides and different spiritual things.
Right.
But as I'm writing the book, it became very obvious how guided I was, the twists and turns that I made. I now know my guardian angels were always there and always with me. So in writing the book, which, as you said in the introduction, was a new trajectory for me and kind of reinventing myself as an author and the path that's taking me on, I realized the spiritual journey that I've been on. Really, I came into this earth with. I just didn't know it until I started writing the book.
That's so interesting that you say Jews didn't believe in angels. I don't know. When I studied the ancient mystery schools and studying the Torah and the ancient Hebrew books, they talk about the archangels. They talk
Absolutely.
about
I was not taught that. I grew up
right.
in a conservative, and I've talked to several friends, and those of us who grew up in the conservative tradition, the Jewish religion has Reformed, conservative, and Orthodox, and I grew up in the conservative, and for whatever reason, in that path, in Chicago, I don't know if it was actually, I have a girlfriend here in California who also had no consciousness of angels. It was just the way we were taught. So it was, I had to learn about that, but I kind of turned away from organized religion very early on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was similar on my path. But, it's interesting. I remember in a bookstore, I was looking at the Kabbalah. This was years ago. And there was this elderly Jewish man, he had all the dressings of a, not a Hasidic, but he was conservative, and I was looking at these books and he goes, why are you looking at these books? He said it nicely. I don't know if it was like that exactly, but I said, well, because I'm curious and I'm studying this. And he said, you're not over 40. These books are not permitted to be discovered, or you're not old enough to basically dive into the mysteries. And I understand that now. And there's certain reverence.
Because I don't understand it. Explain that to me.
Well, I think that his belief system was that, and I had a very traditional Jewish friend whose father was a rabbi in Jerusalem, and explained to me that they thought that there was just too much information, that you would basically, she said, I had an uncle that went crazy. Now, was that the family sort of dialogue that he went crazy because he knew too much? But she said these mystery books are so rich and so complex and confounding that you have to prepare yourself. There's an evolutionary development that occurs within our psyche. That's why they believe at a certain life point, an age basically, that you've had enough living, you have enough, all the running around and crazy life, that you're ready to settle down and really commit to it, or really deeply understand it, because there's a level of responsibility and maturity that comes with it. It's not all intellectual. So I do get that.
Actually, along with that, many people believe that it had to be a male.
Yes. You're right. Yeah, he didn't bring that up.
Probably why not to. You would have not been very happy with it.
Yeah. I was fascinated because, I'm a little Canadian girl. I know, in television, you have the awards and you have all these things, but I didn't really understand what an Emmy was, right? So yeah, we throw that word around. Can you tell us what your understanding of Emmy is and how this came about?
Sure. My very
Because
first,
I think there's people, Karen, watching or listening that don't really understand the value or the importance of what an Emmy is and what
well, and that's why they should buy my book.
and what you went through to get this Emmy award or all
Right.
8 of them.
Well, the very first one was when I was in Chicago. When after I left Drake University, I went back to Chicago, where I'm from, and I went to school at night and worked at ABC as a secretary during the day. And and then after that, I moved to LA, and all that's explained in the book, so I won't explain it here.
Yeah.
And then I ended up coming back to Chicago and worked for WMAQ TV, which was the NBC station there. And I had been nominated for, well, I started as a production assistant, worked my way up to associate producer, and then producer. And I've produced quite a few shows and been nominated many times and never won an Emmy. And an Emmy is basically the industry acknowledging its own, whether it's it's the producer, it's the director, it's all different categories. Mine was the program category because I was producer and executive producer on all of my shows. And so the Emmy is a way of the industry honoring people in the television industry, the same way the Oscar is for the movie industry. So my Emmys are all regional Emmys, which means that they were specifically for the market that I was in. So the first one was a Chicago Emmy, and the other 7 were when I lived in New York, when I worked at the NBC station in New York. So they're all regional Emmys.
Can you hold it up for us? Can we see that beautiful shining golden Emmy?
Here's one of them.
Yeah. So you have all 8 of them lined up on the shelf, and you have to dust them every.
Actually, I don't, because many years ago I made the mistake of putting them out on the balcony and they rusted. So I only have, I only have 3 that are in decent condition, and one my sister has, and the others are kind of in storage and very bad. But anyway, it's fun, and one of the reasons that I ended up writing the book is I had one of these Emmys sitting at a Zoom event, and I'm on the alumni board at Columbia College in Chicago, and we were having a Zoom event for upcoming grads, and I was in the Zoom room for people who might want to go to another market, because I live in Los Angeles now. And for whatever reason, for the first time, I decided I was going to put the Emmy up. And the director of development looked at the Emmy and he said, "Why don't you tell them about the Emmy?" And suddenly everybody was very attentive. And one of the young men said, "You've got to write a book about how to win an Emmy." And I laughed and I said, "Well, you can't really write a book about how to win an Emmy. Number one, you can't quantify it. And number 2, it's a trademark name, and you can't use the name in a book," which I later verified when I was writing the book. And they said, absolutely not. I could talk about it in the book, but nowhere in the back or front cover could I use the word Emmy.
Can you be holding a picture of it and have that on the front cover?
No. No reference to it at all, because
Wow.
and I went all the way up the line just to see if I could do it. I ended up being just as happy with what I ended up doing, because it's like, spirit guided me. It was incredible. Cover was going to be picture of a lot of my awards, including the Emmys. And when they said absolutely not, I went, okay. What am I going to do now? And a friend said to me, "Well, the picture of Prometheus kind of looks like it could be an Emmy." And yeah, it was a friend of mine in London. And I said, "Oh my gosh, I have a picture of me in front of Prometheus," which I had taken 5 or 6 years ago when I was visiting. I was actually doing a gig in New York. So I ended up using the picture of me. Can you see the?
Yeah. It's great.
Of me in front of Prometheus, which looks much better than just a bunch of Emmys in this.
Oh, I don't know. Because I'm naive, and maybe it's because I hardly watched much TV, but I looked it up, and Google says, what does Emmy stand for? And I did not know this. Emmy is derived from a word called IMMY, IMMY. It's a nickname for an image orthicon, a camera tube used in television.
Wow.
An Emmy Award statuette consists of a winged woman representing art and holding aloft an electron representing science. And I find that part fascinating, that here we are in this conversation, and it's almost like empowering us to bring forth the very essence of who we are, this, vibration, energy into form.
I never knew that. I never looked it up. Thank you.
Spirit guided me today. You can see why I was so excited to introduce you. Oh my gosh. I was like, yeah. And so I don't know if that takes on a new flavor for you.
Well, it's interesting because several people have asked me in my promotion process, had it not taken me so long, would anything have been different? And I realized that, nothing that I did was to win an Emmy. It was because it was, again, being in local television, everything that we did was to serve the public. And so the documentaries we did, I did a show called Chicago Camera, where we went all around covering all the different people and festivals, and I did a show called Small World, which did the same. And I did documentaries, and I've always had the policy, if I'm going to do a documentary, there has to be a solution proposed, because to me, just putting out a problem isn't. So it was always the process of, it was the importance of the program. Once it came Emmy time, it was like, oh, it would be really nice to win an Emmy, but that was never the motivation.
Right. So how to win an Emmy, that would reverse what you did. You were actually living and loving your work and putting your heart and soul into it, and therefore you won an Emmy. That's how to win an Emmy, is put your heart and soul into it, right? And be committed. So I'm sure there's people out there thinking, who are the biggest celebrities that you ever worked with or met?
Well, yeah, and I've been blessed with when I left Chicago the first time and moved to Los Angeles. The first job that I got was production assistant for Della Reese. And not everybody a lot of people remember Della from Touched by the Angels.
Oh, I loved her. Yeah.
But back before that, she was the first African-American woman first woman of color to have a music variety talk show. And somebody who I had worked for when I was at ABC in Chicago was the producer on it. And I went to see him, and he introduced me to the executive producer, and they offered me a job, and I didn't want it through connections. So the ego is such an interesting thing. So I got a job offer on the Steve Allan show, and then I went back to the Della Reese show, and I said, well, now I can take it because I know I can get a job on my own. And it was a wonderful decision. Della was one of the most extraordinary human beings, and she was fabulous to work for. And we had a full orchestra, a full band working on the show. And I was the booth production assistant, which meant that I assisted the associate director and did the timings, and met some extraordinary people there. And when you get the book, I have a fun story about how I was playing with a cougar on stage and rolling around with a cougar. And then after that, I was lucky enough, and I don't remember how I found out about it, but I got a job as production assistant on the Bob Hope show.
Wow.
And that
was funny in real life as he is on stage.
Yes. He never stopped telling jokes.
That's too funny.
We would sit in an editing session, and it was amazing how extraordinary his memory was, because he remembered jokes that he told 30 years ago. Yes. He was kind. I was fortunate enough I worked a whole season for him, and part of that was doing the Christmas around the world. And we went to Vietnam and Thailand and Germany and Greece, and the education that I got during that tour was really extraordinary. And at the end of the tour, we were in Alaska, and at that point, I had realized I had slept about 7 hours in 14 days, and so I wasn't feeling the best. And so we were in Alaskan PX, and he bought me an Alaskan doll, which I cherished for years, but it eventually evaporated.
Oh yeah. Oh, how precious. So he was big-hearted and funny.
Yeah, and delightful. He was a very, just the fact that for I don't know how many years, it was probably close to 30 years, he always gave up his Christmases to entertain the troops.
Mhm. Yeah, I remember that growing up.
Yeah, so he was extraordinary that way. And I worked for Rod Serling, the Twilight Zone guy, the guy who created the Twilight Zone. He was just a wonderful gentleman and terrific to work with. I worked many years later. I worked for Jewel for a year and got to travel on the band bus on one of her tours, which was a lot of fun. And while I was in New York, I had the wonderful honor of meeting the Dalai Lama. And at the time, I didn't know who the Dalai Lama was. The host of a show that we did called First Estate, our religion editor, said, "Karen, you've got to come and meet him." And I went, okay, because I trusted Russ. And so he taught me how you take you take a scarf and you hand it to him. That's how you greet him. And so I have a picture of that. And then he took the scarf, put it over his arm, and he shook my hand. And it wasn't until many years later that I learned that was unheard of in those days. He never shook anybody's hand. You never, and especially not a female. And I don't. Some of your viewers probably know Matt Kahn, and we had a session with Matt in my home many years ago, and he looked at the pictures and he said, "I want you to know that the Dalai Lama, when he shook your hand, released you from your previous vows of poverty," which I've always been tickled at because I'm not really sure that that's ever been fully released. But
well, Matt Kahn, whatever. Okay. I'm not going to say anything, but no, I do see, and I wanted to say that my guides keep telling me there's a theme here. Touched by an angel.
Oh, I never put that together.
And I see every single one of them has a similarity for you. And they're all graceful, gentle people. And I'm sure I was going to ask you, is there some people that you really didn't like working with? But, those highlights are so huge, Karen. And I feel like His Grace, Dalai Lama, could see there was a connection or connected with your angel, that he just recognized a higher version of yourself that you haven't yet met. That's what I'm seeing.
And I believe that now. I mean, since the gift I've given myself and Spirit has given to me is writing the book. Because whatever happens with the book, and I do want to get myself out there and do more speaking engagements. Mm-hmm. And I made a prescriptive memoir so that in it I explain what a producer does and what a director does. And had I thought about it, I would have said what an Emmy was, because I didn't know. But within it, when you read the book, for people who want to get into the business, there's a lot of information about what it's about and how you do that and the different things you can do. And the gift I gave myself was writing the book. Plus, before I actually started the process, and this I'm sure was my angels, because I have no idea where the idea came from. I wrote to about 75 friends and relatives and said, "Tell me what your memories are." And got about 50 responses, and probably about 30 of them I included in the book. And then when I started writing the book, I didn't use any of them until the end. And then what I did was after a chapter that something they wrote applied, I put other people's memories. So that was
that of the workplace as a producer?
Everything. It was
Okay.
family and
Family. Okay. Very cool.
so it was something that I've never seen done before. But for me, it was, I've jokingly said to people, I don't need any eulogies when I die because they're all in the book. So it was and a lot of the memories I didn't remember those things, but I included them because it was fun to see how other people looked at things and remembered things. So that was another gift of writing this book. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot more coming.
Yes, I do see another book. I do see that. And I feel it's a very different book. So whatever that means to you, but
It's my alternative health and wellness book.
Yeah. And so that was how we got connected, because you invited me into a project that you were, and we don't have to go into that, but it was health and wellness and spirituality and a TV program, and it never really went anywhere. I mean, it hasn't yet sprouted, right? It's still in the throes, perhaps. But Karen, I've watched you recreate yourself and redirect yourself. And I this conversation was sparked when we were speaking and catching up. And it's almost like I see so many people out there reinventing themselves or get to a midlife career crisis. Perhaps it's a death, perhaps it's a health challenge, perhaps they're not feeling fulfilled in their career, or the career evaporates, like so many jobs seem to be doing, and the puzzle pieces keep rearranging. What was significant for you in your process of shifting?
It was pretty unconscious. I can't say that since I've been in LA, I've pitched a lot of projects and nothing, including the Wellness Channel, which is how you and I connected. That was a huge project for me. I know that I am here to help people understand that they have alternatives. Mm-hmm. And probably that's the greatest disappointment I've ever had, that the health and wellness, we came very, very close to watching it as a cables channel, and the money fell out at the last minute. And
that's a huge disappointment for sure.
Yeah, and I went through a little PTSD from that, and when I look back at it now, the process helped me realize that my angels probably kept me from doing that because it might have been very dangerous. The way things have evolved in the health and wellness industry, for us to have been out there talking about the kinds of alternative options that we would be talking about might have been very dangerous in the climate.
Well, I think it was premature. It was just not ready to be, discussed, cutting edge.
And I think now we're getting closer, and I will probably do that with a podcast and a book to start, and then see where it goes from there. But right. I can't say that I consciously reinvented myself. These things, I was just fortunate.
You were forced into another direction based on the climate, or based on your career, right?
Yeah, I can't even say forced. It just kind of, it just kind of flew. I mean, because, writing a book is not a huge financial boon. It's, but it is a wonderful way to put myself out there. But
you were forced by the pandemic. Everything kind of dried up, right?
Oh, yes.
Isn't that so? You needing to tap into your creative, and there's not much happening. So this is how you directed your energy, and spirit was guiding you. Maybe you weren't paying attention or resisting, like I remember myself resisting. It wasn't until I had my near death and my whole career got slammed and everything fell apart faster than a wet tissue that I needed to, okay, what's plan B or C or D, and go from there. But I see you sort of gracefully moved into that in ways that maybe, like you said, unconsciously.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very fortunate.
I love it. I love it. So
one of my stepdaughters said to me after reading the book, she said, she said, duh, Karen, how come you didn't realize all this stuff when you were going through it? And I didn't. And it's obvious from reading the book that I would. Wasn't
And it's about time you got it. It's about
and it's about
time you
time.
got your, I know you're referencing you got your awards. Tell us about that. Being nominated. How many times were you nominated and you didn't receive an award?
I haven't figured it out, but it's at least a dozen. But I think it was probably more than that. So when again, it was in Chicago. It was a wonderful special we did called NBC Salute Chic Chicago, and it was music variety, and it was really a huge, spectacular show. And when I accepted the award, I said, it's been a long time, but what I meant it's about time. That's why I named the book It's About Time.
Yeah. Well, maybe it was about you finally stepping into it or allowing it. I mean, a lot of times we block what we truly want. Maybe you weren't even really that motivated to have it. You know, it was like, oh yeah, okay, it would be nice, right? So often we're not really
Absolutely.
clear in our intentions. And if you had a different vibe going out there, like, yes, I'm going to win this, versus just la 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 la. If I win it, that would be nice. If I don't, no big deal. I mean, there's a whole different vibe with that.
You're absolutely right. And that's, yeah, it was never consciously important to me.
Right.
And maybe by the time, of course, it would have been really crazy had that not won, because it was really a special show. But yeah, maybe by that time, my intention was more directed. I don't know.
But I also think it's so incredibly wonderful because you were pouring everything into it, having a nonchalant attitude and not really pouring more into it and getting 12 out of 12. Gee whiz, you only got 8 out of 12. Well, I think that's a super.
Oh, no. I'm talking about the first one. There was like 12 nominations for the first one. And then when I moved to New York as program director, I was also executive producer on all our programs. And that's where I won 7 more I was executive producer along with the producers. So, and that was more conscious and more directed. And I did.
You
kind of
got the
nominations, didn't win, but you're right. You're right. The energy was totally redirected.
Yeah, I find that fascinating. Yeah. And so that's just the moral of the story. Now we can't, I wish, hindsight is always 20/20, right? But, just looking at that, we can see how different we're unconscious, most of us, when we're doing these things. But had you been more aware, like with this book and where you want to take it and what you want, really, the true message behind it is it's about time. I think everybody wake up. It's about time to take your power, take that little. Look at that beautiful statue with the vibration of energy. I know they represented science, but they've got energy in their hands. The power's in your hands.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. You've helped me bring a whole new meaning to the process.
And
one of your many gifts.
Doesn't she have angel wings?
Of course.
So the angels within us or around us, and the vibration holding us into this place and in this position to create and manifest what we want, showing us the way if we only boom get the idea.
Well, that must have guides like you. So I'm very, very grateful that you've been in my life for so many years.
Oh, me too, Karen. Yeah. So is there anything else that you'd like to share with the listeners about maybe taking the time, making the time, or stepping into their next big adventure?
Absolutely. What I have learned, my biggest lesson, I've really learned to trust my gut. And whether that's the angels or the guides or starseeds, it's all inside of me. And when I really get quiet and I really pay attention, there's any challenge can be overcome, but it's stopping and listening. And that's really what I have learned. And it's not always easy, especially when you're in business and working for corporations and stuff. And when I look back at my, the trajectory of my career, I call it the Midwestern work ethic, because I was just, motivated. This is what I wanted. So if it didn't work this way, I tried and I twisted and I turned. But it was also, I must have trusted my gut more than I ever knew. And that was my angels and guides. So if I have one piece of advice for people besides working hard, it's to really, really go inside, trust your gut, find out the information that you need to know on an outside level, but know that we are powerful beings and that we have all of the information inside of ourselves. And that's what I want my alternative health and wellness podcast and book to be about, to help people trust themselves, to find their teammates, to find the information that is good for them, because what's good for me is not necessarily good for you, and vice
Right.
versa.
Right.
It's really trusting yourself is the biggest lesson, piece of advice I can give to people.
Thank you. That's wonderful. Now, you have a website, and where can people buy your book?
Okay. Amazon.com. You can just put in my name, Karen Lee Cohen,
Right.
or go to my website, Karen, Karen, Lee, LeeCohen.com. And on the website, there's a button that'll take you to Amazon. And also I have an offering I've put together a list of some of the teammates that I've used, that I've had the blessings to be with over the years, and you can download that and get
Awesome.
that.
Thank you. Yeah, and I'll put your links in the description of this video. So
Thank you.
take me a minute to get going. So thank you so much, Karen. I so appreciate your wisdom and you sharing, your celebrity status with, shaking hands.
I'm sorry, I always laugh at that. Yeah. Somebody called me legendary, and I went, oh my gosh.
Yeah, we're crones, Karen. We're old crones,
And
that's a good thing.
Yeah, it is a good thing.
So thanks everybody for joining in. Thanks for leaving your questions and your comments below. Myself or Karen will be happy to answer your questions. And tune in tomorrow every day. I'm here at 11 a.m. Eastern time. And so I'm looking forward to seeing you again soon. So thanks again. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for being here, Karen, my dear friend.
Thank you.
And I'm sure you're going to go out and create more magic.